I'm on the 38th floor of a condo that I rent for less than 300 bucks in the Philippines. I'm in Manila, Mandaluyong, Manila. It's if you can call an area of a city a suburb, that's what this is like, because there's 15,000 people, at least enough for 15,000 people in the 350-story buildings here. And there's a grocery store underneath and so forth. But today, I'm going to tell you another story about how I arrived in the Philippines and the things that happened to me after I arrived. Okay, first of all, you can check my other video to find out the first portion. But once I arrived in Manila, coming from out nowhere in the Philippines, I went to the tourist area. Now, it would have been nice if I would have gone to a remote tourist area, but I didn't. I went to the tourist area in Manila, which in 1979 was in the Ermita area, which is the place close to their great big park, close to an area they called Mabini back then. And it was full of clubs. It was full of a lot of naughty people, okay? Anyway, that wasn't what I came to the Philippines for. I came to the Philippines to learn to speak Tagalog. I didn't need to come for the girly stuff because in the United States, I had plenty of girlfriends. There was no problem. I was 24 when I arrived in the Philippines. I spent my 25th birthday a couple of weeks later in Manila, Philippines. So no problem with the women in the US. I came to learn the language, but I went to the tourist area and I was confronted with women in such a way I'd never imagined. I was imagining that the Philippines would be a little different from the US, but they'd still have the same kinds of sidewalks, the same kinds of stores, and people would behave in a similar way. Not in the tourist area of Manila. What I saw was nonstop solicitation. Now, this was in 1979. It is not that way anywhere pretty much. Well, there is an area, but I don't go there. Anyway, in Manila, you don't find that so much nowadays, which is great. And I just avoid that one area. And all I meet is your typical Manila resident who is working for a large corporation in most cases, and they may be working at a call center, maybe they're in IT, or maybe they're on hard times, because the majority of the people in Manila are in the lower income brackets. But I live in a condo, so all the people in this building are doing fine. Most of them are young people, and so they're working at call centers, and as I say, IT. And usually if they're single, they've got roommates. And so they're paying something in the area of $150 a month for their rent. If they have three in one unit, they're only paying $100 a month for their rent. And so they can afford to live in beautiful places in Manila. This is one of the reasons why I don't understand why people insist on living in provincial areas. It is not more expensive in Manila. It's less expensive in Manila for a number of reasons. If you're in an outlying area, you're going to be catching a tricycle. Now, if you haven't heard of a tricycle, I'll slap one up on the screen in a moment. But you're going to be riding in a tricycle, or you're going to be riding in a taxi, or you're going to be taking a more expensive form of transportation than the local people do in most cases. And so when you live in the provincial area, you've got to do your shopping. Now, if you want to have a place that's right next to the shopping area, it's going to be very noisy. But the other thing is, it's going to have a lot of pollution from vehicles. And even so, the price, if you live close into the city in a provincial area, is going to be the same cost as it is to live in a condo in Manila. Not to mention that you're going to end up paying more for some commodities that simply cost more if you ship them out to the provincial areas. One of the things people don't realize about the Philippines is that so much of their produce is imported. So if their produce is imported, and instead of going directly to the port in Manila, you got to ship it out to these different small areas, you can pay a lot. Now, the only reason why it doesn't go way through the roof in those areas, like it does in the United States, if you go out in the sticks, sometimes you go into a grocery and some of the prices on commodities are through the roof because they just don't sell enough to make sense to buy in huge volumes. But out here in the provincial areas, they're willing to take a smaller markup because the cost for the locals to live there is less because they're not going into town frequently. They're not trying to go to the donut shop, the coffee shop, or whatever on a daily basis as most expats would do because you can go stir crazy no matter where you live, which is another reason why I live in this city. I used to live up in Lipa, Batangas. That was in 1983. I'll get back to the 1979 story, but let's talk about why I currently have chosen the city. In 1983 till 84, I lived up in Lipa, Batangas, and in Lipa, it's an elevated area. I think it's about 3,000 feet up. So the weather's a little cooler. That's one of the reasons I chose it. And I also didn't care for the city back then. They didn't have the light rail transit like they have here. You had to fight your way to traffic. They didn't have the great big condos with wonderful prices back then and so forth. And so you were stuck if you wanted to save money and live in the province. But I'd go stir crazy. I had to get into the city. So I spent, I don't know, 3 times a week I'd go into the Manila because I just didn't like living out in the sticks. I didn't grow up in the sticks. I grew up in a suburb of Seattle. My condolences to you who still live in Seattle. I moved away from Seattle the moment my folks went to be with the Lord. I did not want to be in Seattle, but I was the youngest, okay, and that's kind of the way it goes. The youngest usually takes care of their folks as they get older. So I moved out of Seattle as soon as my folks passed away. And that was to Arizona, just to get out of Seattle. And then I of course, later moved here to the Philippines. Okay, so you go stir crazy in the province. So by the time you add up the fees for the tricycle, the fees for the taxi, or whatever you're taking to get in and out of the shopping area and back to your house, it's going to end up costing you more or at least the same to live in the provincial area as it does in the city. This place is $285 a month right now with the exchange rate. The air conditioning, if you take the year-round average, it's around $100 a month. And so you're up to $385. The water is almost nothing. It's $150 lately, pesos. So that's like $3. So you're looking at $388. Take an elevator down, go shopping, everything's easy. All right, so back to the story about when I came here, back in 1979. All right, so after I get back down to Manila, after my pen pal kind of kidnaps me up to take me and show me off all over the place, I heard so many bad stories from them about how dangerous it was in Manila that I didn't trust anybody. Now, within the first day or two, I actually met an expat while I was at the Hilton because I was so paranoid. I went to the Hilton Hotel. I had money. I earned it from driving. I just had money prior sales job. So I had money, and I was fine for going to the hotel, the Hilton Hotel, which back then was, I don't know, probably $60 a night. But this guy in there told me there's a place called the Dakota Mansion Apartment Hotel, and you can get a monthly rate there. But I didn't believe the expat because they told me don't trust anybody in Manila. And so I was paranoid that everybody was trying to con me. So I stayed in real cheap hole in the walls. It was either Mabini or Malate Street. I don't remember, maybe both of them. They had these hole in the wall motels that had like 6 to 10 beds, and they charge you about $8 a night. And so, which is not very much cheaper than what it is today. Eventually, I realized Dakota Mansion Apartment Hotel is a place to be, and I get a place there for a month. And I discovered as I went outside. Now I'm from the U.S., right? 24-year-old kid, used to the beaches, flip flops, even barefoot. I go out walking barefoot, okay? I had feet like iron back in my 20s because I was used to walking barefoot in the summertime. So I figure, well, it's 90 degrees here, 88 degrees. I can walk barefoot, right? So I go out barefoot. These little kids, the street kids, the kinds who walk up to you back then and would ask for money, and they'd touch your elbow they'd make sure their hands were as dirty as possible, so you'd rather give them money than have them touch you. But they were dancing around me going, in their own language, walang sapatos, which means he has no shoes, he has no shoes, and they're dancing around me. So I realized it's really considered crazy not to wear shoes. I consider it crazy now anyway, because what do you want to possibly get a piece of glass in your foot? But my feet were real tough back then. They were calloused. Anyway, I spent too much time in hitchhiking down to San Diego when I was a teenager, and enjoying myself on the 3 beaches down there in San Diego. But anyway, so I'm in the Mabini area, and I find out about the shoes. Well, I'm wearing an undershirt, the kind, I don't know what you call them anymore. It's been so long. So I don't, and of course I'm deaf, so I went for about 10 years without hearing any modern terminology for clothing. But just the kind that comes down like this, and this lady in the hotel says, "Why are you naked?" Because to her, if you're wearing that kind of a shirt, you're naked. And I don't think it's like that as much now, but it definitely was in 1979. So this woman, "Why are you naked?" So I realized I got to wear some kind of a regular shirt, not the undershirt, if I go out in public. And what else experience did I have? Oh, yeah. Some of them I don't think they're suitable for me telling you what happened here. But I'm at one of these little cafes where there's all kinds of street girls talking about what street girls talk about. And there's a lady I meet there, and she says to me, a lot of Americans, they make money by getting in movies. And she tells me that she thought I could be an extra, not for being any kind of a star, but she thought that I could be an extra in a movie. And she told me there's this place where they do the shootings. It's called La Wag. And she and I had plans that maybe we'd go out there and see if I could get a job as an extra. So I never did find out if I could be an extra in a movie, but I talked to other people, so I knew that kind of thing was going on. During the same period of time, on that street, a guy comes out at one of the bars, says, I'd like to hire you because the girls who work at my club, I want to keep them in my club. And you're a young guy, and you're the kind of guy that if you work around here, they're going to want to stick around longer. I said, I think that sounds like something. And I don't want to be that something. Word begins with a P and ends with a P. And in between the two, it's forms a word that's of a guy who, a monger. Let's put it that way. And that I did not want to be that, okay? So I declined it, but he was offering a pretty decent salary. That's enough of the Mabini stuff and about what happened back then. I'll talk a little bit about what's going on now in my life because I live in this condo and I have the opportunity to write. I'm working on a revision of a novel that I published. I published 2 novels. I've also got some others in the back burner that I want to write. And I've got 2 kids and I've got 1 wife and I've got a budget that makes it so that I can live here fairly easily. And it's a beautiful place to live for people who want to live fairly high on the hog compared to what they would in the U.S. In the U.S., the life of a lot of retired people is very, very frugal. And many of them depend on subsidies for housing and so forth to survive. And that's not the way it is here. You're not going to get any subsidies, first of all. And this place is, as I said, less than $300 a month. And the food, oh, I get this stuff. It's called beef tapa, and they just recently lowered the price of it. It's a packaged food, so if you're real anti-plastic, you're going to be shy of it. But it's just shy. Let's see, how much is that? Yeah, it's just under $3 a pound. It's the only thing I've seen that's priced here by the pound, but they don't price it by the pound. I mean, it's a pound, but it says 454 grams. Okay, and it tastes great. Less than $3 a pound. You don't have to spice it, nothing. It's like a breakfast kind of a beef that gives you that breakfast spicy taste. Not real spicy, it's kind of a sweet spicy. And so I have that. My freezer, I bought a bunch of that. They just recently lowered the price on it. They've also got ground beef that's safe and that's good. And they also have steak. The steak that you get here is prime rib, porterhouse, ribeye, but you really got to shop it because you got to get something that's fatty. Otherwise, it doesn't taste like the steak you're used to because they are not as exposed to the kinds of beef that taste best that we know of in the U.S. We know that when you get ribeye in the U.S., that's the fattiest beef you're going to get. You expect that to really have a lot of full, moist flavor in it. And here, the only way you're going to get that is if you're very particular about what you're looking for. And when you find it, you buy a bunch of it and you put it in the freezer. Okay? But the price of it is right around $5 a pound, $4.50 to $5 a pound, which is fantastic. But I think that's about all I want to say for this video. And I'm going to tell you, as I always do, I'm praying for you. I love you. Thank you for going to this. God bless you. And don't forget to subscribe, share it, like it. And if you don't like it, you can comment. If you like it, comment. Thanks again. Bye-bye.